Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Spring 2020 webinar for the Fund for Children, Youth, and Families. My name is Jana Lynn Louie, and I am the Program Officer for the Fund for Children, Youth, and Families working at the Greater Washington Community Foundation. Thank you for taking time out of your morning to join us as we talk through this funding announcement and application process. I just want to remind you all to keep your lines muted in order to avoid any feedback or interruptions during this webinar. This webinar is being recorded and will be archived on the Fund for Children, Youth, and Families website, which is fund4cyf.org. I will also share a link at the end of this presentation. Both the recording and the slides will be available. We have a great agenda this morning. We'll briefly talk about the Greater Washington Community Foundation, and then we'll dig in through the history, requirements, and application process for the Fund for Children, Youth, and Families. As I go through this presentation, if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to use the chat box to submit them. Chances are, if you're thinking of something, there's probably someone else on the line who has a question as well, and I want to kind of use this time to make sure we are as helpful to everyone as possible. I will try to answer any questions in real time, but if we do not have an opportunity to, there is a question and answers section that I saved for at the end of the presentation. So we'll answer questions then, and then also open the line to you guys to submit any questions. And let's get started. So for those of you who are kind of new to the Greater Washington Community Foundation and the Fund for Children, Youth, and Families, I figured it'd be helpful to kind of just give you some background about the organization and the work we do. The Greater Washington Community Foundation is a philanthropic nonprofit that has been in the District of Columbia for nearly 50 years now. We often call it the Community Foundation for short, but our work is to connect philanthropists, philanthropic opportunities, and other forms of philanthropic capital to nonprofits working to positively improve lives for people in the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia. Over the past couple of years, we've operated as grant makers, community leaders, and conveners to identify and address some of the more critical issues in our area. Since its founding in 1973, the Community Foundation has invested more than $1.2 billion through a variety of grants for human services, education, the environment, health, arts, and economic development. On this slide, you'll just see a few examples. You'll see a few examples of some of the work that we have done over the years. Everything from incubating City First Bank to launching the Bridge Builders Fund to our recently launched the Catalyst Fund and even the Fund for Children, Youth, and Families, which is what we'll be discussing further today. We manage hundreds of charitable giving funds on behalf of individuals, families, and businesses, and we partner with our donors to pursue their charitable goals, identifying nonprofits and pool resources to the better benefit of our community in this area. Now let's get to the Fund for Children, Youth, and Families. The Fund for Children, Youth, and Families, FFCYF, is a 5-year, $10 million investment set up by Freddie Mac to support housing, foster care, and educational programming for underserved children, youth, and families across the Greater Washington region. Thus far, we've completed 3 rounds of granting for this award and invested a total of nearly $6 million to local organizations in this area. This spring round for 2020 is actually the 4th round of funding for FFCYF. Over the past couple of years, we had the opportunity to work with many amazing organizations. You'll see a quick list at the bottom of this slide of how many organizations we've worked with in each round. If you're interested in seeing the full name of these organizations, the link is available on our website on the main page. When establishing this fund, Freddie Mac was very prescriptive in terms of identifying the priority areas of interest. These priority areas never change with each new round of funding as they're the backbone of these opportunities. To be eligible for funding, a nonprofit organization must be providing programming or activities to one of these specific 3 populations. So the first priority area is called stable homes and stable families. As you know, stabilizing families is a crisis that is moving to self-sufficiency and is critical for many families in this area. There's an overwhelming number of homeless families in the DC metropolitan area, and due to these challenges these families face, there's a wide array of support services that are needed. So for the Fund for Children, Youth, and Families, we invest in organizations that will target families who are homeless and those who are participating in housing-based services programs. For the foster care and adoption priority area, there are over 5,000 children in the foster care system in the Washington metropolitan area, and we are looking to invest in organizations that will support children in the foster care system in two critical areas, either promoting permanency or helping children or youth who are leaving the system and looking to achieve self-sufficiency. The final priority area is academic and career success. The Fund for Children, Youth, and Families is interested in investing in organizations and programs that are looking to close the achievement gaps that exist between students of color, low-income students, and their peers through investments in early childhood education, academic enrichment programming, and college preparation, and early career course trainings. So the Fund for Children, Youth, and Families, our grant making is kind of implemented to something that we call the Outcomes Funding Framework. This framework includes 8 specific outcomes across the 3 priority areas mentioned above, and each submitted proposal must identify one priority area of interest and then select the appropriate outcome that they will be addressing as a result of their work. These specific outcomes help us to identify what we call the human gain achievements. These achievements strongly demonstrate your programming's rating of producing positive results for its participants. Over the next couple of slides, I'll go over a list of the outcomes. It's broken down by priority area, and then share examples of programs and projects that would align with these outcomes. These outcomes are also listed in the RFP on pages 2 and 3, and they're also available on our website. So first up is the stable home and stable families. As discussed earlier, this priority area invests in organizations that will target families who are homeless and those who are participating in housing-based services and programs. Outcome 1, which is homeless families will achieve stability and transition to permanent housing with the assistance of support services. So these are for programs and organizations that are assisting people experiencing homelessness and then trying to place them in permanent housing opportunities. Outcome 2 is for programs or organizations that provide housing assistance and residential services for vulnerable families who are in need of housing. And then outcome 3 is for programs and organizations working to improve personal and financial stability in order to prevent groups from experiencing homelessness. On this slide, we have this priority area, which is foster care and adoption. This priority area invests in those organizations that will support children in the foster care system in 2 critical areas: promoting permanency and helping youth that are leaving the system to achieve self-sufficiency. So outcome 4 is for programs and organizations who are helping to set up foster children in permanent and stable families. These kind of programs includes any work to reunify families, any work to recruit foster and adoptive parents, or any work to place special needs children in adoptive homes. This also supports any programming that provides training and support for foster and adoptive parents, and it also works to provide programming and support for child welfare policy and practices such as advocacy trainings or any educational campaigns. Outcome 5 is for programs or organizations helping children who are aging out of the foster care system by connecting them to stable housing opportunities or connecting them to caring adults and or mentors who can further support them in their transition. Our third priority area is academic and career success. This priority area invests in organizations that will support the closing of the academic achievement gap. Outcome 6 is for programs and organizations helping preschool children to be better prepared for school. So we're looking for programs that offer a stimulating and age-appropriate learning environment and curriculum, programs that can document the growth and development of the child and have a demonstrated ability to address any potential developmental challenges, and then programs that also support and encourage parental engagement. For outcome number 7, this is for programs or organizations supporting educational enrichment for school-age children. We're looking for anything with an engagement and research-based curriculum, any programming that offers to work with parents and creating partnerships between schools and parents, and then also any kind of programming that supports caring adults that are committed to improving the confidence and academic success of children. And lastly, we have outcome 8, which is for programs or organizations providing support services to students in college or early career trainings. This can include students who are interested in college as a goal, from anything from providing guidance through the admissions process, supporting young adults that are in college and just need additional support as they go through the college process, and then providing training opportunities for early age children who are trying to transition out of college or maybe even transition out of high school to join the workforce. I know we went through a lot right now. We have some time if there's 1 or 2 questions on the line or in the chat box, maybe we can go through them. Okay, it says, Brandy says, for stable homes and stable families, outcome 1, you must provide housing. You do not need to provide housing, you just need to provide support for groups that are, or families that are looking for housing. A second question, differences between outcomes 1 and outcomes 2. I will go back to that screen. So outcomes 1, and I have my colleagues Ben and Brittany with me in the room, but outcomes 1 is for families that are currently experiencing homelessness and we're trying to place them into housing. Outcome 2 is for those who are at risk of experiencing homelessness, who just might need support. So they might have a home right now, but they might need support out of their current place of residency or things to that nature. We have another question. Does outcome 6 include infants and toddlers or only children ages 3 to 5?
I think we're open to proposals from across the age spectrum in that bucket. Generally, what we're talking about with outcome 6 is preschool. So I think that infants and toddlers, it may be a little bit of a stretch to note that connection to preschool, but I think we're open to your entrepreneurial ideas.
Thanks.
Sorry, this is Ben Murphy with the Community Foundation. The mystery voice popped in.
Thank you. It's another question is, does outcome 7 only cover out of school time programming? Yes, it does only cover that. Please speak to caring adults. I think this is for outcome number 7. I believe this is just speaking to any kind of mentorship programs or any kind of specific program that is for children who are aging out of the system. And it would kind of be more on an organizational level, so it has to be a program that is instituted instead of the individual level. So there are several kind of organizations like that that exist to just help with the transition. So we're looking for opportunities to fund those kind of mentorship, relationship building programs. There's a few other questions. Kimberly, the support a cooking program curriculum for ages 8 through 13. I would probably need more specifics about that. My email, it'll be at the end, but it's jlouis@thecommunityfoundation.org. If you want to email me more specifics, I can answer that question for you directly, offline. The next question is for academic and career success outcome number 8. Does this include career training programs for adults targeting women, single heads of household?
So I think that the focus on outcome number 8 is on young people. So what you're going to need to be able to do is talk about through your programming that's focused on career training programs for adults, thinking about how it has a trickle down impact on young people, or helping young people seeing college as a goal, or some of these other elements here. Obviously, adults is a flexible term. I think for Fund for Children, Youth, and Families, the age range that we're interested in supporting is up to 24.
Yeah.
So I think that Miranda, some subset of your training program participants may fit into that definition. But I think that this is another instance of an example of, if you have a question about your specific program and its eligibility, Jana can be helpful in an offline conversation to talk about that.
What if you fall into multiple categories? So this is a question that we have gotten, or I've received several times over. The goal with this is that you can only apply for one priority area. So there are 3 buckets, either foster care, homelessness, or academic and career success. Because of the nature of the work, I know a lot of this is fluid. I know a lot of organizations offer wraparound services that touch on all of these factors, but for the purposes of this award, we can only fund one specific area. So it'd be up to the organization to, if you are an organization that offers multiple, to identify which specific priority that you would be interested in, and then aligning that priority with one of the associated outcomes, and then building your proposal in that sense. So you can't apply for multiple priorities. You can only apply for one specific priority. But of course, if a priority has 2 or 3 outcomes and you would want to use or assess multiple outcomes, you can do that, but the multiple outcomes have to be under the same priority. And then we have another question. Does outcome 8 include prepping middle and high school students for college? Yes, it does. Are programs delivered during lunch hour considered out of school time? No, they are not considered out of school time. We have a few more questions, a lot of questions coming in. I'm trying to answer the more general ones. If you have a specific question about your program in particular, I encourage you to send me an email directly. I'm happy to discuss via email or schedule a call, but my email will be at the end, and I encourage you to schedule those. But just to save time, we're going to go back to the presentation and then maybe try to answer a few more of these questions at the end. Okay, next up, we will discuss identifying your targets and measuring your outcomes. So for this funding opportunity, as we discussed, that measuring the outcomes are a huge proponent of how this funding opportunity works. Outcome measurement is a process for determining whether an organization's activities are truly making a positive change in behavior and achievement. This is what we call our human gain achievements. So this is basically, how do you measure success for your program? So for us in particular, we are looking for opportunities where groups will indicate the specific number, not percentages, but whole numbers of children and or families that you're committed to help achieve a specific level of gains. Targets should reflect what you think you can achieve, even if everything does not go perfectly. So include a room for error within your proposal. If you are requesting funding for advocacy, public awareness, or educational efforts, targets can be defined by the anticipated number of children or families that will be impacted by your programming, or it can be defined by how your work will influence, educate, or empower those that can create change. So below are a few examples of targets that can be associated with specific outcomes. So for example, of the 59 families entering ABC's rapid rehousing program during the next 12 months, 56 families will remain housed. Of the 80 children who complete the after-school care program, 60 students will either increase their math or reading grade by 1 level, or maintain an A or B in reading and or math. Of the 30 youth aging out of the foster care served, at least 8 will achieve permanency through adoption or reunification. Things of that nature. So when building out your proposal, you will have to include a target chart, which is our way of quickly identifying and measuring the goals that you will be doing for your proposals. So this chart will quickly just list out the target number. If you have, for example, multiple targets that you will be pursuing as a part of an outcome, each specific target will have their own row. So you do the target number, which is just your first target, the outcome that it is associated with. The target description will be your ultimate goal. And then verification is how you will be internally verifying that your target has been completed or achieved. So we're asking that you just please provide us the information on how you will basically define success for this program. So the example on the screen says, target 1, which is associated with outcome 7, which is under the academic and career success priority area. The target will be, of the 80 children who complete the after-school care program, 60 students will either increase their math and or reading grade by 1 level, or maintain an A or B in reading and or math. In order to participate in the program, students will be required to submit report cards and standardized testing scores. Additional feedback is needed. Oh, there's a typo, but additional feedback will come from school counselors and parents. So this is just a way of identifying how you will define success and how you will check to make sure success is achieved over the course of the next 12 months for your program. If you have, for each outcome, you can select up to 3 targets. We ask you not to exceed more than that. We also, while we know these are great funding opportunities, we also don't want to burden you too much as an organization, so we want to make sure there's fairness and balance. Just kind of think through how you would define success and then identify that in your target chart. And then we will kind of go through the eligibility requirements for this funding award. The eligibility requirements are also available on the RFP, I believe on pages 4 and 5. But an organization must be a nonprofit. You must have a 501c3 designation. The organization's funding request must align with one of the priority areas and will address one or more of the associated outcomes. The organization's funding request must support children, youth, and families only located in one of the following geographic areas. So you must be located in DC, in Northern Virginia, which includes the counties of Arlington, Fairfax, Loudoun, Prince William, and the cities of Alexandria, Falls Church, Manassas, and Leesburg. For those in Maryland, it is the counties of Charles, Frederick, Howard, Montgomery, and Prince George's, and then any statewide efforts in Virginia or statewide efforts in Maryland.
One quick amendment to the statewide efforts piece here, Jenna, is that we are open to statewide efforts in Virginia and Maryland through this fund. However, you will need to make a case in your proposal that the impact you will have through your statewide efforts will be felt in the local area in these suite of counties and cities that Janet just described. So if you are going to apply for a project that is statewide, I would strongly urge you to touch base with Jana about your proposal to make sure that you're framing up your outcomes in an eligible manner.
Thank you, Beth. A few more eligibility requirements. You must not be listed on the Office of Foreign Assets Control Specially Designated Nationals list. Not sure what that is. The organization must have a successful track record, at least 2 years of relevant work in the field that the organization is applying for support. So while I know there's an interest from a lot of newer organizations who are interested in this, as just part of assessing the ability of an organization to do this, we just need to have faith that you've already successfully done this before. So we look for groups that have a little bit of prior experience working in these areas. If you are a previous awardee for either the Fund for Children, Youth, or Family or any of the other funding opportunities from the Community Foundation, you must be current in all your reporting for the Community Foundation. So you can't have any outstanding reports at the time the application is submitted, and you must be within good standing for the organization. And then lastly, we do not fund organizations that discriminate on any services or practices based on race, color, religion, ethnicity, sex, age, all of the above. By applying, your organization is attesting to the fact that you do not participate in any of these discriminatory practices. Here are the funding parameters. Applicants may request between $5,000 to $50,000 for general operating support or for project or program support. For program or project support, you must identify, again, one priority area that your program falls under, and then identify one or more of the following outcomes that you will be tying your program to. The program options that we are considering eligible are direct service programs, advocacy programs, public awareness programs, and any educational efforts. For those groups interested in applying for funding for general operational support, your organization must have, like all of your organization's programs must address the one priority area that you guys are interested in applying for general operational support for. And we can take a pause now because I see a lot of questions coming in the chat. Let's see. Okay. All right. For outcome, okay. We need to submit a program. Do we need to submit a program budget if we're applying for general operational support? All of our programs fall under the CF priority areas.
No, generally, if you're submitting a general operating report, the request is that you submit an organizational budget along with your application. And guidance on the attachments that you're going to be asked to submit are on the website. So there'll be an interactive tool that'll ask you to upload the specific attachments that are appropriate for your proposal.
Okay. Can targets be based on qualitative data? Yeah, sure. By qualitative, you mean specific?
So I can see. For instance, if you're going to be doing a program, an after-school program for young people that is focused on building self-esteem in order to improve academic achievement. That is a qualitative data source in terms of survey data and sort of self-reported information from young people to gauge their relative confidence in their academic achievement. So yes, you can base targets on qualitative data. And you'll just need to make sure that the data source sets are tracking towards one of those primary outcomes for the Fund for Children, Youth, and Families to make sure that there's a solid connection there.
Okay, thanks, Ben. What size font? Size 11 font for the narrative portion. We'll go over that in the next section when we go to the submitting your proposal. Back to priorities and outcomes. Can we apply for more than one outcome? You can apply for more than one outcome under your specific priority, but you can only apply for one priority area. Our national, can national orgs apply for support for a local program within the target geographies eligible? Yes, you can. Yes.
So one thing to note about the national organizations I think that yes, you're eligible to apply. One thing that I think it would be strategic for you to consider doing in your application would be to talk about your track record in our local area to make the case for the reviewers who are going to be reading this proposal that while you are a national organization, you do have connections and stakeholders here in Greater Washington. We do have a value of trying to support local work and grassroots work. So to the extent that you can provide support letters or other information that can demonstrate how you're working in our local area for more than 2 years, it would be very helpful.
Thank you. Is this the last year of FFCYF grants, or does the foundation expect for it to be renewed? This is not the last year for the grant. This is the 4th year. And it's a 5-year award, so technically next year will be the last year. We have not had any conversations yet about renewal or what opportunities will look like after that. So we don't have any information on that right now. Follow up to the national question, define requirements for an organization is located. Well, it's about, I think it's just the population of interest or the population you are serving has to be located within this geographical region. So for example, if your office is in Baltimore, but you are doing work in Montgomery County, that is fine and acceptable because you're impacting the lives of people within the geographical area of interest. So it's not about where your office is physically located, it's just where the impact of your work will be felt. I think we have another general question. Does organization play a role in your funding decision? Yes, the organizational budget does play a role in our funding decision in terms of we just want to ensure groups are managing a budget well and managing a budget successfully. It just helps give us confidence that once if you are awarded funds, that you will be able to successfully manage the funds awarded to you. Do organizations need a 2-year history of service? Yes. Organizations do need a 2-year history of service in the eligible geographical region. The average grant award, the grant sizes, they just all vary. We have, I think most grants are about 50,000 or they range from 25 to 50,000. We don't have as many $5,000 grants, but it just all varies based on the proposal that is submitted and the work that is looking to be completed. Letters of support are
They're encouraged.
They're encouraged, but not required. We definitely, if you feel like it'll strengthen your application and kind of have people recommend your work and speak to your work, we would love to kind of hear those things. So we encourage letters of support where possible. Would youth, young adult employment skills training, not especially focused on college, be relevant to this opportunity? Yes, it would be relevant. That falls under, I believe, outcome 8, which is kind of focused on skills development for youth and young adults. Do you anticipate certain priority areas being more competitive than others? Is there a target number of orgs you plan to fund in each priority area? I'm not sure if competitive is the right word. We kind of just take all the applications and review them as they come in. So it's not necessarily a direct competition between priority areas. We just look to fund the best proposals where possible.
I think we do have a value of wanting to have a geographic spread of the proposals, and so I think it would be very unlikely that at the end of this process we will come out with 46 grantees in the District of Columbia alone. Mm-hmm. But we don't have a specific quota for every jurisdiction in our footprint.
Can you repeat the answer concerning addressing more than one outcome within one of the 3 priority areas in one application? Okay, so basically, I will go back to the slides for the outcomes. For example, you can only select one priority area, right? So it's either you will either apply for funding for foster care and adoption, or you will apply for funding for academic and career success, or you will apply for stable homes and families. If you, for example, choose to apply for funding for academic and career success, there are 3 outcomes of which you can select. Outcome 6, which is kind of focused on preschool children. Outcome 7, which is for school-age children, probably elementary through high school. And then outcome 8, which is for children who are interested in kind of post-secondary work or careers, which is support for collegiate, whether applying for college, support while in college, or skills development training for children after college or after high school. So you can select, if you choose to do academic and career success, you could select to only do outcome 6, or you can select to do outcome 6 and 7, or you can select outcome 6, 7, and 8 if you choose to. If you choose to say that your proposal will go for all 3 outcomes. The thing with selecting it is that for each outcome, you have to identify a specific target. Your target is what helps us recognize how you will achieve this outcome you're interested in. So your target is your tangible goal for completing these outcomes. You can have no more than 3 goals per outcome. For example, so if you do the max, which is 3 goals per outcomes for each of these 3 outcomes in the academic and career success field, that means you have a total of 9 targets that you would have for this. If you did all 3 but only chose to do 1, then you would have 3 targets that you'd have to complete over the next couple of months. So hopefully that makes it a little clearer, but the goal is to select basically 1 priority area and select at least 1 outcome underneath that priority area to align your proposal to. Okay. We have a few questions where it looks like it's going to go through the application portion, so I will pause this for a little bit, and I want to go through the eligibility criteria or go through the application process so we can see what it will look like, and then we can take more questions afterwards.
I love you. Come on.
So, submitting your proposal. So the application system is at that link listed above. I can send the link out to everyone individually, but if you go to our Fund for Children, Youth, and Families website and click on the Apply tab, the link is right there. So that's the quick and direct access to get it there. One thing of note is that you can only use the application system on either Internet Explorer or Firefox. This browser or this application system does not work on Chrome, or I think if it does work on Chrome, it's very clunky and you'll have a lot of technical issues. So to use it at its peak functionality, we encourage everyone to either only use Internet Explorer or Firefox when I'm trying to access the portal. Also, because of just the application system, I know a lot of people wait through to the end to submit, and just concerns about the system being overburdened. I encourage everyone as early as possible to go log into the system to either create an account or access their portal to make sure that they have no issues creating the account and accessing the template, the application template. So create an account. The first couple of screens, you can enter your organizational information, and then you can attach all the proposal attachments following. You can, as you go through the application system, there is a save button, so you can save your progress along the way. You don't have to kind of log in and do it all at once. There's an opportunity to kind of piecemeal your application through the system. Once you save and finish, there is a separate link that will be emailed to you after you create the application template, where you can kind of just go back in and access your partially completed application until you're done. And as a reminder, the application is due at 4 p.m. on Monday, March 9th. Not 4:01, not 4:05, 4 p.m. The application template will deactivate, and if you are halfway through, unfortunately, you will not be able to submit your application. So again, encouraging groups as early as possible, even if it's now, to start beginning pieces of your application, and you can save it. You don't have to submit it as you start now, but that just hopefully keeps from any last minute disasters on March 9th, because as I just expect that more people will be going into the system on that day to submit their proposals. So on the next couple of slides, we'll kind of go through screenshots of what the application system looks like. This first one is the organizational information page. This page is just kind of more just fill-in boxes that have just the name, your mailing address, phone number, just basic organizational information that we'll be able to use to identify your business. The next screen is the points of contact. You will have to identify 2 points of contact for this award. The first one will be the primary contact. This is the person who will manage the day-to-day operations for this grant. We're just asking for names, title, phone number, email address. The second one is the authorizing official, which is the person who has the legal authorization to sign any documentation for your contract and awards. For some organizations, that might be the CEO, the executive director, the chief financial officer, but whoever has the legal authority to sign off on contracts and things of that nature, we would need their information there as well. And again, if you see at the bottom, you'll see that save and finish later. So you can easily go in the system now and put those preliminary data in and then save and come back. The next tab is the proposal request. This is just the basic information about your award. It's the name of the project. So you can either put the name of the program or the project you're requesting funding for. If you're asking for general operating support, you can just list general operating support. And then there's a drop-down menu that you select that for as well. Then you select which funding priority area that you are applying for, which is one of the 3 priority areas discussed earlier today. And then if you are requesting for advocacy, public awareness, or educational, you just select the next drop-down menu. Then you will fill in your requested amount, and then you will kind of go in and check off which geographic area that your programming will be impacting. Then again, you will select the Fund for Children, Youth, and Family priority area, and then you will select any outcomes you will be measuring. Submitting your proposal. So this year, in order to kind of streamline this, we are doing the narrative portion as a PDF file. Hopefully that makes it easier for everyone, so you don't have to kind of come in and copy and paste things into the system. One thing to include, and this is very important to make note, just make sure that in your narrative portion, you also include a brief summary of your organization's history and mission. Describe your organization's current program activities, and describe your organization's capability to do this work. Once you get those 3 things, this is just kind of a background narrative on your organization, the work you do, so we can just better understand your work. Then you will go into the full narrative piece, which basically discusses your proposal. So, for example, what is the need or the issue that needs to be addressed through your program? Describe the participants you will serve through your program. Describe your targets and measurable objectives. Outline your work plan. Tell us how you'll define success. Describe any potential challenges or barriers you anticipate. And then if there are any key collaborators or community supporters for your project, we would like to learn more about them too, and learn about the role that they play in your work. So feel free to include those as well. And then we ask for your organization's financial successes and challenges that may have affected any of your work in the past. And then we just ask that you include your target summary chart in the narrative, as well as your milestone chart in this narrative. So this will all be just one document. We request that you submit as a PDF file, and make sure the last name of the primary lead is on the top left corner on every page, just to make sure that nothing is lost in that transition. Please use single spacing, half-inch margins, size 11 font, and please do not exceed more than 15 pages. I know it's a lot of information, but hopefully if we can do it in one place, it makes it easier on one end that you can kind of create this narrative all in one piece. One of the items discussed is the milestone chart, which will be included in your narrative. Your milestone chart is kind of just a work plan that'll help us just walk us through how you will be using these funds, or what will be your objectives over the next 12 months to ensure that you complete your targets as appropriate. So for example, this first step, this is just an example chart, but it would be, project step would be contact families. The milestone would be the program coordinator will contact the families referred for housing support. Oh, it got cut off. But then the date of this would be, referrals are kind of listed on or received on a ongoing basis. So the goal would be that the program coordinator would reach out to these families within 1 week of receiving these referrals from the DC Housing Authority. And so this will basically just create like a work plan. So us as reviewers and program staff for this award can better just identify what your work will look like over the 12 months to see how you'll be doing your work. For each milestone, that we just ask that each milestone just has its own separate row, and that hopefully at the conclusion, the final milestone should be whatever your target is, that you have achieved increased housing support or academic success for certain groups of people. And so this milestone chart will just help us better to track and use it as a map for the work that you will be doing. After you complete your narrative, then there will be a series of attachments that you have to submit. Things as organizational information, such as an org chart, a personnel chart, short biographies. Then there's the list of board members, your current fiscal year budget versus your actual budget. So your fiscal year budget is just your budget for your year versus actual is kind of more year to date, what has already been spent or utilized. Then I think there's a few other attachments that are listed, but they're not all on the screen. But everything that is required will have a red asterisk. For those that are not required, for example, letters of support might not be required, but if you want to submit it, you can submit them through the system. And then the last one will be the authorization, and this is just the name of your executive director or the authorizing official for your organization. Signing off on your application saying it is complete and it is ready to be submitted. Lastly, this is the review my application. I didn't have anything put in, so you see a lot of red errors. But the goal is you go to review my application and anything that is missing will be in red and will be highlighted on that page. And you can go on that page and submit all that missing information in. It's just one last final check to make sure that everything is submitted correctly for your application. Only applications that every requirement has been submitted in full will be considered complete, and only those complete applications will move through to the review process. So it's very important that you go back and make sure that you have included all the appropriate attachments and filled out the appropriate boxes to make sure that everything is complete for your application. And then this is just a quick review of the timeline for the program. Again, the applications are due by 4 p.m. on Monday, March 9th. Submitted proposals, we have a review process here, which includes a mix of Community Foundation staff as well as external reviewers who have expertise in the priority areas for this fund. These reviewers review your applications, they provide feedback, and then we have an in-person review committee meeting, or we have several in-person review committee meetings to go over the proposals, discuss them, and the reviewers help us identify which proposals will move forward with granting. So we anticipate that the awards will be announced in summer 2020. I'm hoping to get a July 1st start date, but we'll just kind of see from there. And I might be, Ben's looking at me, I'm a little ambitious, but we'll see how it goes. One thing to note about the review process is that just as part of the process, you might get emails or telephone calls or any type of communications from the foundation just requesting more information or clarification. Receiving communication does not guarantee that you have funding, and on the opposite end, just because you do not receive communication does not mean you've been denied funding. This is just part of our internal review process where we might just need more information about an application. And I think that's pretty much it for me. So we have questions. I think we have a few questions in the chat. And I think we have some good time, and I'll answer a few questions from the chat, and then maybe we'll open the floor to a few people. Can we submit financials in our own format, or do we have to complete the budget worksheet with the org financial information provided by FFCYF?
So I guess you can submit financials in your own format. But I think that the reason that we provide the budget worksheet is to show to organizations that may be less familiar with putting together financials for funding applications, the specific information that we're hoping to get through this process. So I would just encourage you all to look at the budget worksheet to ensure that whatever format you have on your own does provide the same level of detail and information. Due to the high volume of proposals that we receive through Fund for Children, Youth, and Families, we have a very limited ability to go back to nonprofit applicants to ask for updated attachments. And so we really base our review on what you submit on March 9th. Yeah. So yes, you can submit on your own format, but please just make sure that you're submitting at the full, complete level of detail that we need, because it's a shame when we have to disqualify applicants based on attachments.
Yeah. What is the funding cycle for this grant? This is the spring 2020 funding cycle. This is the 4th round for the Fund for Children, Youth, and Families. There is a total of 5 rounds for this fund. So we're coming near to the end.
And I think that maybe reading between the lines of this question, it sounds like what you're tracking for is a July 1st program year.
Yeah.
And these are 1-year grants. So if it is a July 1 year, we're gonna end up in
June 30th. Yeah, July 1st to June 30th. If the project involves training child welfare professionals, do our targets need to include the number of children, families impacted by the programming? Are estimates accepted? Yes, and yes. Yes to both questions. Is an annual review completed by an outside accounting firm acceptable instead of an annual audit?
It's acceptable. I think our general rule of thumb is if you're an organization with a budget of $250,000 or more, our preference is that you have an audit prepared by a third-party vendor to provide that independent financials. Organizations with budgets of less than $250,000, we allow a submission of your 990, specifically the first 6 pages of your 990 to sub in for your audit. I think if you're not going to use an external audit, and you're going to be submitting an annual review completed by an accounting firm, I would just note maybe somewhere in that submission, maybe write up a letter attaching it to that submission, noting why you don't have an audit.
Thank you. Instructions on the evaluation of advocacy efforts. Sure, let me go back to my notes on that. Okay, so if you are requesting funding for advocacy, public awareness, educational efforts, so these are things that they might not be direct services, your targets can be the number of children or families that you anticipate that will be impacted by your programming, or it can be your targets can be the amount of people that your work will influence, educate, or empower. For advocacy efforts, it's always kind of a slippery one because we all know that advocacy is something that takes time. It's not something that is always completely started and completed within 12 months. I try to think through of maybe what are your specific goals for your advocacy efforts? Are your advocacy efforts maybe trainings over the next couple of 12 months, or webinars, or it's how many people do you anticipate to attend these trainings, or how many people do you anticipate attending these calls? Or is there a trickle-down effect where you might do a training for a specific group of 12 people and they go back and do advocacy work with their specific communities? So for advocacy work, it can be a little bit trickier, but it's more thinking about your specific goals and the ultimate goal of what you're trying to do for your particular campaign, and then aligning that to the outcomes of interest and making your target aligned to that. Someone said, did you say, yes, half-inch margins for the narrative? Is the primary lead the person familiar with the grant, the writer, or the person who leads the program? The primary lead will be the person who leads the program. Do you sometimes fund less than requested as opposed to declining support? Yes, there are opportunities that you might get funded at a lower level instead of at the funding you requested, and those are just conversations that we would have as well. If the awards are announced in summer 2020, may we still apply for support in a summer learning program in 2020?
Yeah, I think that you can apply for that, and what you would need to do is make clear in your proposal that it would be a retroactive grant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the project implementation timeline? I think this goes back to the July 1st to June 30th. So July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. For outcomes, would field trips occurring during school hours but outside of a classroom be applicable? Yeah, I think that would be fine. But again, if you have specific questions about your proposal, it might be easier just to send me an email with whatever your thoughts are, and you could probably provide me more context, and then we can talk through any more specific questions. Are MOUs acceptable in lieu of support letters?
Generally, yes, MOUs are fine. In fact, if you're going to be doing work inside a school building, many school systems require an MOU with a provider to be able to operate within those schools. If you're requesting funding for a program like that, I think you would definitely need to submit that signed MOU. But yes, MOUs also speak to partnerships and inherent support, and those can be acceptable. Again, support letters are not required for most applications. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. How many applications do you typically receive for each funding cycle, and can you share how many grants are typically awarded? I'm going to be honest, this is my first time doing this application cycle. I just joined the Community Foundation in November. From what I have heard from previous cycles is that there are typically about 175 to 200 applications that come in for one of these funding cycles, and we grant around 46 to 47. There is a max funding of $2 million that we can give out for every funding cycle. So the number of awards just is what we can get that takes us closer to $2 million. Will the 5th and final grant round be held in 2021? As of now, yes, that's when the last grant round will be held. And it'll probably be a spring 2020 round as well. So it'll kind of come out around this time of the year next year. And I think those are all the questions in the chat. Are there any questions on the line? Oh, will there be anything to replace this grant after 2021? As we're not sure right now, we haven't had any conversations about renewals or anything of that sort. So that is just something, I guess, stay tuned, and maybe we can have more information at another time.
Yeah, I will say that it's unlikely that we're going to be renewing the Fund for Children, Youth, and Families in its current form beyond 2021, partially because of the history of how the fund was created. The Freddie Mac Foundation was shut down by the federal government during the Great Recession. And the corpus of their foundation came here to the community foundation to do this grant making for these 5 years. I don't believe that Freddie Mac Foundation is going to go out of business again. So it's unlikely they will get another chunk of funds from Freddie to do this. However, I would just encourage everybody to keep an eye out on our seasonal rounds. We do have 4 seasonal grant rounds at the community foundation. We have open opportunities on many of those rounds. So I'll always keep an eye out on the communityfoundation.org/for-nonprofits. That's where you find all of our current opportunities that we have for nonprofits to apply.
Thanks, Ben. And another question, if we apply for general operations, would the primary lead be the CEO or a program director? I think the primary lead would be whoever is the point person for managing that award. Usually it isn't the CEO because the CEO usually gets pulled into tons of other activities. So I would think that it will most likely be the program director. Are there any questions on the line? Okay. Oh, wait, one last one in the chat box. Oh, well, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for joining. You're welcome, Kristen. Thank you for joining us. So here is my information here. My email address is jlouis@thecommunityfoundation.org. The website for the Fund for Children, Youth, and Families is fund4cyf.org. If you go to the About section, I believe that lists out the priorities and the outcomes. If you go to the Apply section, you can pull up a PDF of the RFP, and it also includes a link up to our application portal. And then if you go to the Webinar tab, later on this week, we will have the webinar archived, and we'll also have the slides available for you if you want to kind of go through them again. Again, if you have any specific questions about your proposals or just want any feedback, I will not be doing a full review, but if you just want someone to bounce ideas off and see if you meet the basic eligibility criteria, I'm happy to help in that sense. Just shoot me a quick email with whatever your ideas are, and we can discuss either via email or phone call, whichever is helpful. All right, thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining.